Welcome back to Behind the Vocals. This week we have the honor of being joined by Chris Balay of Elitist. This is a fantastic episode. I had an absolute blast chatting with Chris. Lots of great conversation, tips, tricks, what he's done over the years, things he did to go through tours, all that stuff, studio tips, and even how he likes to record his stuff in the studio, which is really interesting. I hope you enjoy this episode. Let's get into it. All right, we are joined by the one and only Chris from Elitist. Sir, how are you doing? Hopefully you're staying cool.
I'm doing well today, man. I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Dude, thank you for coming on, man. It's an honor to have you. It is. I'm so excited to chat all things vocals with you, pick your brain, kind of learn some of the stuff you do. And how you been, man? How's everything been going? How's life been?
Life's been great, actually, lately, especially. Lot of good things happening. I feel like I'm always at my best self when I'm creative and making music, and right now we're in a music making mode, so that's always good. Other elements of my life are really good right now, as far as relationships, family, work. Everything's really lining up right now, and it feels good. So yeah, I'm great.
I love hearing that. That's awesome. So speaking of Elitist and new music, I want to ask right off the bat. So we have Dark out, but we got new music coming, right? Hopefully, since you're making
very soon. Yeah.
Yes.
Keep tuned, guys. Very soon. We just dropped Dark, our newest single and music video, which you can find wherever music is found. But yeah, very soon we're going to be dropping some new tunes, so keep a lookout.
Hell yeah, man.
Sooner than later.
I'm excited. Shows and stuff planned, or anything like tours or anything in the works, festivals, anything?
Well, not that we're definitely not opposed to that. The guys, we've been talking about that sort of thing, when and if we release more music and people are into it and want us to play some shows, or maybe a regional tour, or maybe a one-off tour on an album release, if you will. We're super stoked on that idea, and we love that. I personally would love that, but at the same time, there's a lot of variables to touring, and a lot of variables to, like, when a band, we all live in different areas.
Oh, really?
And so, like, we all live in different states for the most. I mean, not all of us, actually. Like, me and Julian live here in Cali. Brian actually just moved to San Diego, but Ben, our drummer, lives in DC right now. He just bought a home in DC, and he was living in New York that's where he lived for the longest time. So we're kind of like, all over the place. But to get together for a tour, it's totally possible. It's more just, we all have different things going on in our lives. So, careers, families, and whatnot. So it does make touring difficult when it's not like the first thing that you do.
So were you guys actually all located closer back when you guys were touring and really getting after it back then, or?
No, actually, we were probably even further apart.
Oh,
then.
Wow.
I would just say it was more like we had an off season and an on season for touring. And so, like, we knew when it was time to go, and so we would just get together, practice, weeks in advance, kind of get everything ready and do a tour. But in our off time from touring, we were as I said, Ben was living in New York. He would stay with us, though. I mean, it was a crazy time back then. We were all kind of young, traveling around, like, everything was pretty nuts. Yeah, I think we're all a little bit more stable in our environments now, as far as, like, where we're set up and stationed.
Okay. All right. So how I like to start this, I just kind of like to give you the floor and let you just kind of introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself, and just let the people know who you are.
Sure. My name's Chris Balay. I am the vocalist of Los Angeles metalcore outfit Elitist. We've been a band since 2010. I have been in other side projects along with some of the members of Elitist. Julian and I did Forever Orion, so fans of Forever Orion who know about that out there. I'm also the vocalist of that project and a couple other side projects. I consider myself a vocalist by passion, but professionally, I guess I did it. I did it to a degree, so it's cool to think of myself in that light. But just vocals have always been something. Music in general has always been something that I've just been super passionate about. Raised in a family that was really into music, and so I was always given the chance to be creative in that way, and was like a choir kid, and I've always been singing, love all sorts of different music, but I really have found a knack and or appreciation for, you know, heavy music and all the energy and passion that it brings and the emotion that it kind of evokes and how it gets the people going, you know, just gets the crowd moving. There's nothing quite like a good metal show. Like the energy that's brought in that environment is just, so yeah, I fell in love with that, you know, being like a Warped Tour kid when I was younger, going to those sorts of festivals, even when I was like, you know, like 10, 11 years old, and got kind of a crash course in like what that energy was all about. And I was pretty much hooked ever since. So yeah, music kind of came naturally to me as far as just like, it just made sense because I was always into it. And my family, you know, my dad was a musician and played guitar and was a singer. So it's always been around. So yeah, I just, you know, metal and doing like metal vocals kind of, I don't know. I don't really know how that officially came about. That was more just listening to bands that I took inspiration from when I was younger. The first ones that I can think of that I was really like, how did they do that? Or I want to know what that, like, how do you do, like, that's so cool. Was like, you know, The Used, Finch, Thrice, you know, like all the old like Warped Tour type bands, like in like 2000, 2001, you know, you can't forget, like, when I was even younger, obviously, like Limp Bizkit and Korn were huge. And so like they were heavy, but it was sort of like a different sort of like mainstream heavy with other elements of music. And it wasn't kind of like just straightforward, like screamo, whatever, if you will. So I was into that. And like Linkin Park was a huge influence in general. I think everyone was to a degree influenced by Linkin Park when they came around. I was, you know, I'm thinking that was like 99 to 2002. So I was like, that's like 4th and 5th grade, you know? So that's like pivotal time to be influenced by music. So I'll always listen to all sorts of music, but I'd say kind of got my start screaming, kind of trying to emulate like Burt McCracken and Nate from Finch, and just like they're just insane kind of like passion that they would just throw it out there. And I was like, dude, that's gnarly. And so I would always just try to, like, in my car or whenever listening along, try to emulate that. And I guess it started as like trying to copy, you know, my favorite musicians and or understand how they made that sound like come out of their mouth. And then it kind of developed into something a lot more, which is really cool, which I never really thought would be the case, but I'm happy it was.
Hell yeah. I'm glad you said Finch. That's a band I haven't heard in so long, but man, Finch, I used to love some Finch. That's awesome, man. That's a really cool one.
Definitely one of, like, if I'm being real with myself, like as far as especially influential bands, I mean, they're like all time for me, and like they're not like my favorite band, but they were at one point for sure. Like
they're
What It
so
Is to
good.
Burn, it's such an amazing album, and just like the time period, and it's timeless. It's super classic. So I have a huge appreciation for them. As I said, The Used, Thrice, like all those types of bands that came around that were dropping albums like right around that time. Story of the Year was a little later, but like Story of the Year was huge for me as well. Like that kind of style, and then like Seosin, and then Under Oath. Like Under Oath was sort of like the slightly later version of all those bands, and it was a little bit more heavy. And I was sort of like, whoa, what's this? What's this about? And They're Only Chasing Safety is like one of my favorite albums of all time. And yeah, I would say there was like just a slow progression of like getting into more heavy and heavy and heavy, because it just kept getting heavier, to the point where I was like ran into the big three, which was like later in high school, like sophomore year, I guess, or maybe even freshman year. I was listening to them probably like 2006, I guess, like they were called Rosecrans, but Born of Osiris,
yeah,
After the Burial, and Veil of Maya,
yeah,
which I call the big three. Those were like my like huge influential, like which brought me to like the the prog tech world side of things, and like the more kind of like deep, you know, low screaming, like the guttural stuff, and like the more like death metal or whatever, if you will. I you know, that was my first like influence, or like time hearing that sort of thing. So I was used to more of like the just kind of like raw, throwing it out there, more kind of mid or high range. And then I heard Born of Osiris and was just like, what the fuck is going on? And then I remember just being like,
name. New Rain was
oh,
insane.
it's completely. And I just remember being like, this is insane. Like, this is actually insane. Like, what it did to my brain, the visceral reaction like I had was like, I wish I could like, yeah, it's, you can't replicate that. It was pretty bonkers. So I would say I was hooked on that for its own reason. Like, I still liked the other stuff, but then I was like, yo, this is nuts. And so I don't know, I guess I've always liked extremity in music. Like, I just think it's kind of cool when it gets pushed to like certain crazy boundaries. And that was the first time I heard something like that. But then on the other, like, I guess that was my introduction. And then, you know, it's like All Shall Perish, Job for a Cowboy, Whitechapel. You know, you got like that range of bands, which I listened to a lot when I was younger as well. But yeah, so there was a range. There was a whole range of these bands that were all pivotal, and kind of like I tried to sort of take pieces and emulate stuff from all of them. So I have like really bad vocal ADD, I guess you could say, when it comes to that, because like I don't want to focus on just like one thing. Like, people are like, what's your vocal style? I'm like, scream. I scream. Like I don't know. I just do kind of whatever I want, I suppose, or whatever I'm feeling, which sometimes it's like a high, sometimes it's a mid, sometimes it's a low, sometimes it's whatever. Like, I don't know. I kind of just, I'm not going to say I wing it. It's like thought out, but I guess over the years of kind of doing,
you're not stuck in like one just set range or motion or anything.
Yeah, like some people have just like they do the thing and they do it super well, but like that's their thing. And like, I don't know. Like, I don't know if I would classify myself as having like a thing. Obviously, we all have a voice, and like my voice sounds the way it does. But as far as like a technique or a style, I sort of like, depending on what the song calls for or like what I'm feeling, I do something different. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I love that you reference him as Rosecrans. That's awesome. That lets me know you've been listening to Born of Osiris for a long time. I will never forget when they were getting ready for New Rain. I think it was MySpace days, right? Whenever New Rain was coming out.
Oh yeah, for
sure. And they were releasing like a song a week, or like one song like every week or every other week, just to kind of hype up the album. And we would wait on the drop, and as soon as the drop, we just mind blown. We're like, what the hell is this? Like, what is going on? No one does this.
No, the album was bonkers. The first time I heard Abstract Art, I like took a lap. I like just went outside and I like ran. I was like, this is ridiculous. But yeah, huge props to them. They're definitely, they paved the way for a lot of like bands. And it's crazy. They've been at it for like what, like 22 years now,
dude,
or like
it's
20.
A long time.
It's like like, yeah, they just, it's wild that they're still at it. But yeah, so a lot of different bands. Like, man, it's a laundry list. You know, it's hard to think of all the different bands that had an influence. There's literally so many, but I would say that was kind of like, all the ones I mentioned were pretty pivotal as far as like vocals and like, but yeah, like even like Chodo's Scary Kids Scaring Kids, like all like those early like Warped Tour, like that's how it kind of like started, was like all those.
So they were kind of like your gateway in a way, like the Warped
Tour.
Like, to get you
like
into the
Used
heavier...
and Finished was like the gateway drug to like Born of Osiris, which, and then, you know, and Whitechapel, which, you know, so yeah, that's a good way of saying that, I suppose.
All right, so before you started doing vocals, did you play any other instruments? I know you said your dad played guitar. Did you play anything else before vocals, or?
I did. Well, I mean, I suppose before like officially was like I'm doing vocals, but I play guitar, and I still do play guitar, but like I'm more of like an acoustic guitar kind of guy, and like that's most of the writing I do is on acoustic guitar. But I like know my way around a guitar, and I can play guitar, but just not as well as, you know, the members of my band. Like, you know, so
you guys are crazy. There.
Yeah, Julian's exceptionally talented. He's a super humble guy, so he doesn't even realize, but it's amazing. It's amazing to be able to make music with him. It's always been a pleasure. It's a lot of fun. He's super awesome. But yeah, so I can't play anywhere near that creatively or just technically. So I I can also like I tried to play drums. I did the whole drum thing. I feel like every like 8-year-old, you know, needs to like, you know, just wants to like bang on, you know, just so I kind of got that out of my system, but I really didn't like practicing drums.
Yeah.
So tedious and so annoying for me. But that's the thing, like just like anything, like practice is what makes you good at something. So you can't just like avoid practicing. Vocals was something that I was happy to practice, and it was easier for me to practice. I didn't really think of it as practicing, or like it wasn't like a chore. I just enjoyed doing it. But practicing drums was very annoying and tedious, and just be like, you know, bop, on the drum pad, just bop, 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 and like practicing your, you know, I couldn't stand it. So tried drums first, then took some guitar lessons and kind of just naturally picked up a guitar. But yeah, vocals kind of fell into place around like the high, like, you know, late middle school, high school time, I suppose you could say.
Okay. And how did you learn? I know you mentioned you were just kind of like trying to emulate bands you were listening to. Is that how you learned how to scream and kind of find your voice? And
yeah, for sure. Like basically just like in the car, like, or in my room, just like screaming, like pissing the neighbors off and pissing my parents off so much. But yeah, no, that's definitely how it began, was like losing my voice, screaming to the user, screaming to Under Oath, and trying to well, it's so funny because when you're young, like you don't really understand how everything works. And like I didn't understand how recording worked, and like how production, like what, you know, production plays such a huge role in like vocals as far as recording and all that. And so I was always like, how do I sound like they sound right now, but like without, like I was doing this without a microphone and without, you know, any digital, like without anything, and I was trying to sound exactly like that. So I kind of put myself through like a lot trying to emulate what these vocals sound like, just raw, you know what I mean? Like that was always my goal, is to be like, well, no, I don't need a microphone and I don't need like effects, like there's no distortion, I'm just going to do it, and hopefully it sounds really similar to that. And so that was like how I learned how to scream. So then when I was starting to record, it was almost like too much distortion, because my voice was always naturally like really distorted when I would try to scream. So it was a learning process, being like, oh, like that, like recording helps that happen naturally. Like you don't need to do that as much, or like you don't even want to, because it kind of sounds weird. It like cancels out the frequencies or whatever. So yeah, learning to scream and not really knowing or being told like that there were techniques was kind of interesting. Because yeah, I didn't, no one told me like what I was supposed to do, or I never asked anyone really. I was more just, at that time, it was kind of weird to just scream, you know, like no one was like, everyone was like, what is this music you're listening to? You know what I mean? Like it wasn't like a super normal thing. Just me and my friends were into it, but like not everyone was. So yeah, I would say just experience listening to my favorite tunes and just raw dogging it. You know what I mean?
okay. So did you ever look up anything at all? And I know, especially back then, YouTube and stuff, there really wasn't any tutorials, not any that really like told you anything on like, hey, don't do this, it may hurt you, or you know, there really wasn't anything like there is now. Now, you know, there's a plethora on the internet. You go and there's teachers everywhere. But I mean,
right?
Did you learn anything that way, or was it all just like, okay, this hurts, don't do it, this feels fine?
Well, I would say it definitely took me blowing my voice out a lot to like learn some lessons for sure. Especially touring. Like it's way different when you go on tour and you're having to do it night after night after night, back to back, and you have very little time for your vocals to recover. Basically, like your recording voice, or what you would do when you were recording a single or like an album, is like not the same thing as what you would do live. Like obviously you want to try to make it as close to sounding like that as you can, because like you want your live performance to sound as similar to the album as you can. But there's typically like degrees of what you do to ensure that you don't, because when I record, I'm going balls to the wall, you know, full like Clarence Claymore, like I'm going for it. And like it, you have to, because that's an immortalized take. Like it's a take that will be there forever. You're going to hear it constantly. and you know, on a live show, it's not like you can rewind it or pause it. It's just like in that moment you hear it. There's a whole live band. So it's like, it's a little bit different, but for recording, you need that take to be memorable and not like, it could be a great take. It could sound good. Like the take was good, but maybe next to the other takes, it just is like bland or like too much the same, or doesn't have enough. Like you got to have some flair and some character with it. And so I'm also willing to go a little harder and go a little more crazy when it's like a recording session, which I feel like is normal. I feel like most people would say that they go more intense when they're recording, but live, you got to dial it back a little bit, and you got to have to find that kind of comfortable range that you can just go to all the time, that feels nice, that isn't going to rip your vocal cords to shreds. Because it's not even if you're doing the right techniques, it's like eventually just night after night after night of just abuse of like just using it over and over again. It's a muscle just like anything else, and it just fatigues. So yeah, but that's the thing about vocal cords is like a lot of people are like, oh dude, how do you do that? Or like, how do you make that sound? And it's like, well, lots of practice, but also it's a muscle, just like anything. And if you don't exercise it and you're not constantly using it in that way and training it, it goes away. Like, you know, it goes away, or like it gets weak, and you do have to take care of it. I know a lot of people are always like, oh, I do this before vocals, I do that, you know. Everyone has their own like tricks and stuff, but from like a science perspective, there's only a few things that you should avoid, or certain things that you should do or can do to like improve. One of the things is like not like acidic things are like not good for vocals. Yeah. So like sugar isn't good, bubbles aren't good. So like any like bubbly sugary drinks, like so soda's out. Basically like it sucks because I love like San Pellegrino. I love sparkling water. I drink sparkling water with like lemon as much as I can. But those two things are like not super conducive to especially recording, but like doing vocals in general. You want to just be constantly drinking a lot of fluids, but like not cold, not super cold, just like kind of room temp or like cool fluids. You know, on tour I would use like honey because like it helps like coat the throat, and like it just like gives you a nice like I mean it's not an over abundance of it. I used to like drink obviously before shows sometimes to kind of like calm the nerves, and temporarily it might seem like a little alcohol is like beneficial for your throat. It's not, because like really soon after, like once you cross that threshold, like your vocal cords get way more tired, way faster, you fatigue, and then in the long term, it's not a good, you know, I don't recommend that. It's not conducive to having healthy vocal cords. But like diet is extremely important for like being able to have your passageways and your airways strong, and like, you know, core strength is important too. Like anyone who says like exercise and being fit like has nothing to do with it, like they're not correct. Or
I mean, you think about it, you're up there yelling for, you know, 45 minutes to an hour. That's gonna wear out anybody. I mean, that's crazy cardio.
Yeah, it's because it's more than just on the voice. It's like it's all coming from diaphragm, and it's like a lot of core engagement, and it's a lot of just it's a lot. And then plus, you know, if you're running around, jumping around, throwing yourself into the crowd, you know, like it gets wild. And so obviously you can take a break and like not do certain parts or give the mic to the crowd, but like, you know, sometimes it's a bad look doing that too often. If you're just like constantly tired and out of breath, you know, it looks weird.
All right.
So yeah, it's all these things come into play, and like I was slapped in the face with this knowledge like on tour. Like you really come to it full circle. I literally there would be some days that you just don't talk like until you have to perform. Like I was basically using like sign language with the guys, like, you know, like not talking, because any amount of like vocal use that was unnecessary was like detrimental until you kind of get in a groove. Like I always, in my opinion, night 1 and night 2 was always the biggest struggle for me on tour, because first of all, there's like a huge adrenaline, like you're super excited. There's all this adrenaline, and you're like nervous, you know, like you're meeting all the new bands you're touring with. you're like, oh, we haven't done this in a minute. Oh, it's crowds. It's all this stuff, but you're excited. But it's normal to go like way too hard night one, just because it's like, as I said, the adrenaline, it's like a huge dopamine dumping. You're just like going insane. And I would always rip my vocal cords to shreds and just overdo it like really hard on night one. And then the next day I would wake up and just be like, oh no, and then night two would be a struggle. And that's why I didn't like night two, because I was like, my vocals are shot. I don't feel good. But then it was always like caught a groove by night three. It was like, okay, cool, we're on tour, everything's cool. And you hit that sweet spot. But it's hard, man. It's definitely hard, especially when you don't tour like all the time.
Yeah. All right. So when you were starting off, what are some early mistakes you made, and was there ever an aha moment? And as far as like early mistakes, you were just talking about like night one going too hard, like getting too in the moment, too much adrenaline, like pushing too hard, all that stuff. What were some early mistakes and stuff, and when did it all kind of click? I guess tour probably is when a lot of it was like, oh, okay, we don't need to do this, we need to do that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I would say the biggest aha moments were like on tour and or hearing from other vocalists of other bands giving me kind of like, advice, because they're like, oh yeah, this is your first tour, like you haven't been doing this long, like here's what happened to me, or like this is what you should do. But I mean, yeah, the amount of times that I completely lost my voice from screaming to stuff in the car or whatever, just pushing way too hard. It's like you think that if you push harder, it's going to sound better or be louder. No, that's just how you injure yourself. So it's kind of like, you got to bring the energy. Like you have to be kind of like prepared to deliver, because if you don't have energy, then it just sounds like kind of half-assed, and then it sounds silly. But I would say it's not, you don't have to go balls to the wall. Like most people assume like, oh, you just scream really loud and like hard. People that aren't, screaming, people that don't do it, that's probably what they assume. But it's actually like, no, like it's really coming from your breath and like your diaphragm and like the, what you're doing through there. So it was more like learning that it's not your throat. Like, I mean, your throat controls things, and you're able to do things, of course, control tone and all that, but it's not like the main source of where the volume and like the stuff's coming from. So I was always just like pure throat, like just basically actually just screaming, which I still kind of, it's more of a yell now, but I essentially just kind of just throw it. Like I have more technique over the years of kind of reeling it in and just experience. That's kind of what it is. I mean, there's all sorts of different techniques. There's like, false chord, fry screaming, there's these different guttural kind of things. Yeah, I honestly just kind of scream. Like but I have like a comfortable range, which I know how to do it without ruining my vocal cords anymore. But it's literally just from years and years of just trial and error, I suppose.
Yeah.
You were mentioning earlier, like if I had gotten like, looked up anything that helped me. Eventually I did get with like kind of a vocal coach who like specializes in helping people that scream and sing, kind of like that transition from being able to sing and then having to scream, which is like way different than just screaming or just singing. And that was really helpful. I didn't, had a couple sessions with her. She was just kind of more insightful. It wasn't necessarily like tons of techniques, but she did kind of help with the warm-up process and like things that I can do to help warm up that kind of help guide like your range and keep you healthy and keep you from injuring yourself.
Perfect segue. The next question I have for you is, before you perform, whether it's tour, one-off show, studio, under the weather, whatever, different variables, do you have a warm-up routine you do? And if so, does it change based on those variables?
That's a really good question. So it definitely changes depending on what's going on. Like a warm-up routine for a live show is like substantial. Like it would be, half an hour to 45 minutes of doing like a specific thing. Also kind of like to psych yourself up and like just get mentally ready, because it's going to be not just you in a booth. It's like you on stage. Like, as you said, it's a marathon. It's like you're up there for 45 minutes or to an hour, and it's intense. So definitely for pre-show, I had this once. I still do this, but I have this one song that I kind of like stole the intro from and sort of made it like my own warm-up technique. It's called Eyes on Fire by Blue Foundation, I think is the name of the song. It's not a metal song at all. It's just the beginning kind of, it has this intro. It goes like, oh, 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 oh. Oh, 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 oh. And so it like jumps around a lot.
Yeah.
And it has this like O thing, which O kind of like, it's like a nice like pattern for like doing, like you do that a lot when you're streaming.
Right.
And like it kind of opens up. So I would do that at different octaves. I would basically start super low, like as low as I could. So it'd be like, oh, 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 you know, or like whatever. And I would do that low octave 3 or 4 times to really get, you know, that feeling of those like lower notes. And then eventually would bring it up super high to like, you know, and like just go as high and just, you know, pierce it. Obviously I'm not warming up now. I'm just kind of throwing it out there. But
yeah.
So I would just do that over and over and over again. And it was kind of a nice, like it kind of encapsulated everything that I needed, which was like a lot of stop and go, a lot of breath control, and a lot of like jumping of range. So by the time I was like on stage, it was really easy to just kind of go right into screaming because like I was super, super warmed up at all different ranges. But yeah, that was kind of a weird thing that became a tour, like on tour before show sort of thing. I like found, I'd always loved that song, but I was like, oh, this is a good like warm-up thing. And so I would just do it. And I know all the guys in the bands that I toured with would be like, oh, yeah, I remember that. He did that all the time. It's annoying as hell. But I would say like before, it would completely depend on how I felt like before recording. As I said, I kind of would just go balls to the wall while recording. So it's more just like stay as calm as you can and like be like just take care of like your throat and take care of like your energy before I take, you know what I mean? So I would almost like not necessarily do too much warming up before recording. I would just kind of be like, let's go. You know what I mean? So I had as much energy as possible. And sometimes the very first takes like sound the best because you're like super fresh and everything is upsetting. But yeah, I don't know. Like I would say that I don't have, it's like screaming in the car, man, or just like singing in the car. I sing a lot. So singing helps the screaming warm up. It kind of warms up all the muscles. You gotta sing and you gotta get the natural voice going before you add like energy and rasp and all that to it. And that's really helpful, I guess.
So you screamed before you learned to, or you sung before you learned to scream, correct?
Yeah. I've always kind of sang. I don't consider myself like some incredible singer or anything, but I was always into singing and like I did choir and like, you know, as a kid, I've always sang. So that kind of came more naturally. It was the screaming that I was like, what the heck? And like had to really like figure that out. But as I said, I think it's easier if you have an understanding and control of your vocal cords at all, like in general, singing or screaming, it helps to scream.
I always like to ask which one comes first, and it's a mixed bag. We'll get some that say, well, I screamed first, and then I didn't even know I could sing, and then one day I just started singing, and, you know, it's like it was easier, and it's interesting to see how that progresses depending on, you know, who it is and everything. Okay, so what do you do for vocal care? I know you mentioned vocal rest, which is pretty much a staple if you're a vocalist, a singer, screamer, whatever. You will hear vocal rest just drummed into your head over and over again. If you're, you know, hoarse or your voice, you've lost your voice, don't talk, write notes, sign language, whatever. Just stay quiet until you have to.
Yeah, that's pretty, like when you wake up, as I said, and like your voice is just gone. Like there's a difference between like, oh, my voice hurts, I can't really talk, and like your voice is gone.
Yeah.
And it's pretty scary when you wake up and you can't talk, and you have to play a show that night. Like, talk about anxiety, but like, yeah, the human body's pretty incredible, and it's able to heal pretty fast. I would say sleep's the most important thing, man. So the amount of times I would force myself to sleep on the tour bus or like the van or whatever, wherever we were, even if it was like on a bench outside the venue, like whatever, dude, you or at the green room, you gotta get those Z's in, because it's just for anything. Like, if for the gym goers out there, like your next workout is only as good as your recovery, was. And so you can't just like go hit the gym super hard after not getting sleep and not, eating. It's not going to go well. So it's the same exact thing for vocals. And if you don't sleep, you don't have energy, and you need energy. So I would say just sleep, water. So it's like, and then everyone's got their little things that might help them. Like, as I said, like honey, or tea, but tea also is like astringent, can dry out the throat, and like caffeine is like not necessarily conducive either. So like tea does have caffeine, and it's kind of dry, but a little iced tea with some honey, now we're in that range. I don't know. There's no exact science, but there are definitely things that are like really detrimental to vocal care. So I would say the most important things are sleep, rest and water. And then the other things are like, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, So don't stay up late, don't drink a bunch or at all. Don't drink bubbly, sugary things, and don't eat a bunch of crap. So essentially, don't have any fun, and then your vocals will be better.
But yeah, I love asking those questions just because it really does. Each guest, it's very different, from the vocal warm-ups. What you did is very different than other guests. So I love hearing the different approaches, how, you get your voice ready to play those shows, and how you take care of it too. I mean, it's everybody, like you said, has their own thing. I myself, I never drank before shows. It's just, I know it would affect me, and I would worry that I would push too much if I got past a certain point, like I maybe would get too into it or something, and also I was kind of always OCD about it. Like, I just wanted to make sure, like, I was always really particular about my parts and stuff, and really my own worst critic. So I'd always be like, no drinking before shows. Then usually, later on, maybe if it's not a tour, if it's a tour, yeah, I'm probably going to be like just chilling and resting and getting ready for the next day.
Yeah, no, I totally feel that. For me, back when I was a hoodlum wild man, I would it was like almost for the anxiety, for like to loosen up, just to loosen up and just to like lower the anxiety levels before going on. It had no benefit mentally for me for like the vocal cords though. Yeah. It was basically just like, this helps me get out there. But, in retrospect, it wasn't helpful at all. And I, wouldn't do that in the future. And I don't do that now. So,
and the ones that have said they drank before shows or drank during a show, it's never been for, it makes my voice better. It's more like, it's to take the edge off, essentially. And like, just to get me a little looser on stage.
You can tell too, like if you are in a band or you're a vocalist and you've seen a band live multiple times, like, I've definitely seen a band, and I've seen the vocalist when he was on, and then I've seen that same vocalist when he definitely had too many, like a few too many, and like would even talk to him after. He was like, "Oh yeah, I was hammered," and it was just like, I could tell, like it doesn't sound good, like you know what I mean. Like you might think it sounds good, because you have beer ears. You got the beer goggle ears. Everything sounds good when you're drunk, but like that's the thing is, it's better to be on point and like to take care of your body and make sure that it's like a well-oiled machine. You can't be anything and everything that you introduce that's like bad like that is like it has more of an effect than you would think. And then you're like, oh, why does it sound shitty? It's like, well, because you did this, and this. You didn't sleep. It was like you were doing triple shots of tequila and lime last. I saw you. You know what I mean? Like, what do you mean? You know. But so it's yeah. Just take care of yourself and get sleep.
Lots of sleep, and that's hard to do on tour. Like you said, you have to just do it where you can, when you can. You have to just get.
It is. Tour is stressful, and you know, so I totally understand why people do drink when they're on tour, and or don't get sleep. So it's like but it's part of the game. You just gotta play it just like anything else.
All right, well, we're gonna shift gears a little bit. So I want to talk lyrics. Where do you pull from for lyrics? Do you pull from personal experience? Do you pull from concepts? Do you do both? What do you prefer and why?
So good question. I would say it's a healthy combination of both. I don't really try to pigeonhole myself in like any particular style, or like I only do this or I only pull from life experiences. I would say like a lot of the things that I've written about up to this point could be my own personal experiences. It could be things that I see from the people around me that are just in my life, whether it be family or friends or relationships. A lot of it, especially early on, was conceptual stuff and or like ideas or thoughts that I'd have from like seeing film or like watching like certain TV shows, and just like not necessarily pulling directly from what the show was, but it made me think about certain things in a certain way. And I was like, wow, that's interesting. I've never thought about that. Or like, oh, this is kind of a cool rabbit hole to go down as far as conceptually. So I definitely pulled from a lot of different things over the years. I was really into poetry when I was a student, like when I was in high school and college. I was really into poetry, and I wrote a lot of poetry. And I feel like some of my original songs, or like a lot of my songs, are basically just thoughts of mine, or basically poems that I've transcribed into song form. Because that's really what songs are. They're essentially, you know, they're poems or journals, you know, to oneself or to someone else. But like, I've literally directly taken just like thoughts that I wrote down in like poetry form and just directly moved it and was like, oh, I can fit that into a song. That works. You know, maybe change one or two things here. But that's kind of like how how my mind approaches it, kind of almost from like a poetry way. But like, yeah, as far as lyrics specifically, I'm all over the map. Like I have mad ADD when it comes to like what I'm pulling from. It kind of depends on what's going on in my life at the time. When I'm writing, I'm always writing, but like when I'm choosing to write to create specific lyrics for like a song, for instance, man, it really depends on what's kind of going on in the tone of my life and or what I'm going through. And it could be not even what I'm going through as it pertains to the lyrics I'm writing about me. It's just like it could change my mindset of like how I'm thinking about things. So sometimes it could be a little bit more dark, no pun intended, but like a little more like kind of, you know, not so uplifting or not so happy or not so. It could be just a little more like whoa and intense, because that's just where my brain's at and like what I'm dealing with. Or it could be like, I don't think there's any rhyme or reason though to like when I do that. Sometimes I was like, I could write a really happy song or an uplifting song or something like that when I was in like a terrible mood. So I think it's more just what kind of flows when I'm trying to write and like what comes naturally. But I've always sort of written, is I guess what I'm saying. Even before music, I like to write. So the writing kind of just comes naturally.
Okay, nice. Do you so since you do both, do you have a harder time getting more into it emotionally when it's conceptual stuff? Like you said, if you pull something from a TV or an idea, something compared to something that may have been like, you know, a traumatic experience or something you dealt with in your life. Do you have any like trouble?
I would say that the traumatic stuff and or stuff that like I actually pull from that as it pertains to me, of course that hits like a different chord, you know, and it's like I can get emotional when I write, and that also when I record. Like when I'm recording that, I feel like you can like almost hear that coming through, or like sometimes I'll be sort of emotional when I'm recording something, depending on what it is. But I would actually say no, like when I do the conceptual stuff, it's like really cool. I like geek out on it. You know, it's more like a way to tell a story that's not like, it might have nothing to do with me or like my story. So it's almost more fun to do that because it's like the sky's kind of the limit with like what you can do with it. And I don't know, there's a lot of topics that I enjoy and that I like diving into. And so it's a cool, writing music is a cool canvas for that, for like being able to kind of just get your general thoughts out. And it doesn't have to be pertaining to like you or anything important. It could just be like, yo, I was just thinking about this and I find it fascinating or interesting. And so I'm going to write a song about it. Like there's no rules, you know what I mean? So I actually, yeah, to answer your question, I really like doing conceptual stuff where I feel almost like a third party, like out from a distance looking in, and like I'm able to almost like it's like creating stories, which is what like cinema is. It's like, like you think about these scripts and like what these directors' visions are, and like some of them are just like completely original thoughts, and you're just like, how did they come up with this? This is so cool. And so like music's the same way. Like obviously there's tons of original content, but I really truly feel like most people most people are inspired from the things that are around them on a daily basis, whether they know it or not. Someone might be like, no, this is totally me and how I feel. And it's like, well, also could be because you were watching Game of Thrones every night for the last, you know what I mean? Like, dude, like, pretty sure you're influenced by this. Why you're talking about sword fighting in your damn song? You know what I mean? Like that's just a silly example, but I'm very aware that basically my surroundings and my environment plays a huge role in my creativity. I don't think that I'm like organically super creative. I think that all the stuff that I pull from is stuff that I experience, see, feel, which is all from my environment. So
okay, nice. Do you do all the lyric writing, or do any of the other band members contribute lyrics, or like, hey, I like this line, or maybe I wrote this? Do you have any of that, or is it just solely on you?
Historically, I have written like most all the lyrics, but absolutely the bandmates have had like really great insight and great moments and like have contributed. Like what'll happen is like I'll be like maybe stuck with just like basically the whole song's written, or maybe I just don't like a part of it, and I'm like, what's a better way to say this? I just don't like how I'm saying this, like, and I'll kind of give it to them and see if what they can kind of come up with. And I'm always like really impressed and like happy with like what they do, because super smart guys, they understand it, they totally get it. So I'm happy to take their insight and their influence when I can. Most of the time, it just like it just works out, and like I have what I need, and like it all fits, and I don't need a ton of help with that. But yeah, they've all definitely contributed. I can actually think of like specific lines in certain songs that I was like, that was so Ben came in hot with that, or like that was definitely a Julian classic, or Brian. Yeah, and like Brian does vocals for us as well, our bassist Brian. So like I will definitely ask his opinion on stuff and get insight into like concept. Well, like if like when we move forward and write new music, I'm always like, hey, is there anything you guys want to talk about or like want to write in a song, or is there a concept or idea that you guys are interested that you'd like to put on a song that I can like do, and then we can collaborate. So I'm always open to it. Like we definitely talk about that, but historically, I'd say probably like 95% of the lyrics have been me.
Okay. So I'm really curious to see where this is going to go based on the musical, the people that inspired you. But do you have a lyricist that you look up to, or that has inspired you over the years?
So I mean, wow. I
know it's a kind of a loaded question. It's pretty hard.
Yeah, no, it's crazy because like I mean, obviously with all the bands and all the different music I listened to over the years, like at any given time, it was like, yes, like this guy, this moment, oh my God, this song. Like for instance, like Nate from Finch, like the earlier I go back, obviously the more impactful like lyrics and music is, or at least it was for me, because like everything is much more impactful.
But I would say like later on in life, like in my current adult life, when you experience things and you see it through the eyes of like now, songs hit way different. You know what I mean? And like the things that you weren't dealing with any of that stuff back then. You were like, you don't know what the hell he's talking about. Like I was 12 years old. Like I didn't know what the hell they were talking about. I mean, I heard the words that were coming out of their mouth, but I couldn't relate. You know what I mean? It depended on what the song was, but then later on in life, you like look back at some of these songs that you were like infatuated with or like really into, that you just liked it for the energy of the song or whatever, and you sang all the words, and you were like, oh wow, like it has a totally different meaning. So like at any given time in my life, like there's been so many like pivotal people that like I have like probably borderline obsessed over. It's just hard to like narrow it down and think of like one, or I mean,
it's tough.
It's
like
really
you said,
tough.
You go through your life and there are different sections. You can almost classify like you said, Finch will be a certain period in your life. You're like, this band was very, very significant right here, and then later on, maybe Born of Osiris or whoever,
and then maybe not even a metal band.
Absolutely, it can be all across the broad
one of my
spectrum.
favorite bands of all time was Minus the Bear. Like I've always loved Minus the Bear. They're fucking dope. And if none of you know who Minus the Bear is, go look at Minus the Bear. They're fucking sick. but literally, I've seen that band 15 to 16 times live. Like I had all the records lyrically and conceptually. A lot of the stuff that they talk about, and like those have been some of my favorite lyrics over the year in general. It's tough, man. That's such a loaded question. Because I'm guessing that like you're gonna wonder if there's like a lyric specifically that like I like the most.
Reader, yeah, that is also a loaded question. Like this is back to back pretty tough, and it definitely, to me at least, it definitely it depends on where you're at in your life. Like what point, like me 10 years ago, a lyric may have resonated way more with me than it does now, and vice versa with like the lyricists and stuff. But as far as the favorite lyric, it can be your own, which seems to be a popular way for people to go, or someone else's lyric.
Okay. Well, I mean, I suppose, okay. Well, not that it makes it necessarily, well, okay. It definitely makes it easier to pick like one of mine just because like it's a way smaller list. Like I could literally be like, oh, and I could go through like almost every song in my mind. It's like if I was to write down every single band that I've loved over the years, like that list would be super long, let alone the songs from those bands and then individual lyrics. So it's like, man, it'd be really hard to pull from that. I would say, to make it easier on myself, I guess I'll pick one from me or like from my band. Okay. I would say, so there's two. I would say two because they're completely different as far as like one of them is like a conceptual thing and like has nothing to, it's like it was basically a concept album too. Like Reshape Reason was definitely a concept album, and all the lyrics like are pertaining to like, a certain things that like have nothing to do with our self-titled, and that was more of a personal experience sort of album. So I'll pick one from each because one was like, it was some of the, in my opinion, most fun lyrics I wrote, and or looking back on it was like, oh, I don't even, like at first I was like, what was I saying? Like, what was I saying? But I was like, looks cool, sounds cool. But like, no, I had a thought of like what I wanted to say, and it just kind of came out. As I said, it was more like poem sonnet form, and I sort of just ran with it. And then after I wrote it, I was like, I don't know where my head was at, but this is pretty sick. And so I would just say the song itself from that self-titled Reshape Reason has some of the cool, like some of just conceptually the lyrics in that song are way different than a lot of other songs that I've ever written. And then from our self-titled Lonely Giant is a song that I think is really, it was impactful for me. It still is. And like it's definitely like a self-experience or self-reflection or like, but it's also metaphorical for like everyone, Okay. So it's got that thing that everyone can pull from. But it's just kind of like an emotionally powerful song as far as lyrically. I think the lyric specifically that I'm one that I'm thinking about is like, it's like in the bridge. It's the bridge, and I'm trying to. This is funny that I'm like putting myself on the spot with my own song and I can't remember. I mean, I know the lyrics, but I'm just trying to remember how it flows into that section.
Isn't it always funny, like, if you were to try to recite your lyrics that you've wrote, you'll be like, and then you have to like think about it. But whenever the music plays and you're like with a mic, you're just like, oh yeah, it's like muscle memory.
I can't, if I start at the beginning of the song, I'm like, okay, and I can just say it like it's a conversation. I can say all the lyrics, but jumping into like the midway of the song, unless it's just the chorus or something, I'm kind of like, huh. You know, like, so I mean, I guess I would say, I mean, I could physically look up the lyrics right now and just give you the lyric, but just those two songs, I would say, have my favorite lyrics that I've written. I like. There's a lot of good moments as far as lyrically that I've written in our stuff that I really like. That I look back on and I'm like, wow, that was, yeah, man, that was cool, or like I really like that, or it still means a lot to me now. But I don't know. Yeah, man, that's a really hard question.
It's tough. That's why I put it on there, because I like to throw a little bit of curveballs at you guys and just.
Yeah, no,
really,
that's one that like you have to. That's one that you got to sit on for like weeks, and like I could get back to you. Yeah, it would literally take forever to come up with that answer, but I might be able to do it. It's tough. It's really tough.
Do you ever look back at your discography and everything you've done, like lyrically, and you can see like, okay, this was going on in my life at this period, and then this was happening, and like you can kind of like graph it, I guess, if you will.
100%.
It's pretty cool how all that works out. Like you can pinpoint parts of your life and like what was happening based on what you wrote, and like you said, your environment, your surroundings, all that.
Yeah, or just like what you were into, like what you were excited about, and like what you were like what you were putting your energy into. It's super illuminating and really funny, especially after the fact. But yeah, some of it, like it's weird. Some of it will age like a fine wine. Some of it you're like, oh God, I cannot believe I did that, or like I cannot believe, like, what was I doing? You know what I mean? But some of it is like it's always really cool when you're like, wow, I was you know, before my year, you know, like before my time, like whatever, like I was ahead of time, you know. There are moments like that when I'm like, oh, like I had a, you know, that was pretty cool. Like that's a good thing I had going. Like I wasn't completely out of touch with myself or whatever, but yeah, other times, man, I'm like, what the heck? Like, or I'm just like, why was I so pissed? You know, like what was I mad about? You know, like why was I so angry? You know what I mean? Or something like that. Or yeah, it is funny. Definitely. But yeah, 100%. It's easy to see the timeline, especially when you're looking at like tour and you're getting like memories from like tours and like certain dates and time frames, and you're like, oh my God, that's what I was wearing then. Oh my Lord. You know, it's like everything from wardrobe to, yeah, it's definitely funny. Little time capsules.
Oh yeah, for sure. One thing I love about metal lyrics and just the metal genre in general are how lyrics are so open-ended. You know, how you may write a song and what it means to you, whether it's conceptually or personal. You know, how when I first hear it, I may interpret it completely different and may apply it to my life in a certain way. And I've always thought that was really cool, how people can like just make it their own, if you will. And it's you see it often. We wrote a song one time. It was a conceptual song. It was about Dexter. Obviously, we were all very much into the show Dexter, so we themed it around Dexter. And then a buddy of mine messaged me and was like, man, you're going through some stuff right now. I was like, no, actually, no, it's about Dexter. But, you know, just like how people interpret it. I've always loved that because, like, you know, you listen to something and, you know, if you don't know the band or what it's about, just how you took it, you're like, okay, this is how I'm understanding it and how I'm taking it. And then I can take it different. I always thought that was really cool.
No, that is the coolest thing about conceptual stuff, and or not even necessarily conceptual stuff. Like it could just be like a straight up like, no, this is what I'm saying, but someone else takes a different meaning from what you're saying, or it hits them differently because of like they might not be going through what you're going through, but in that similar verbiage, they can relate it to something they're going through. Yeah. And so that's actually why early on, I think, especially like when I first joined the band in general was kind of more conceptual in general. Like everything about Elitist was more like concept stuff. And I kind of like, understood that. And so I was trying to go for stuff that was more broad and thought provoking, that anyone could interpret it any way they wanted. You know what I mean? Because it allows for a greater audience too. Like you don't want to alienate certain audience members. I wanted, 11-year-old girl to be able to listen to it, and a 50-year-old dude. Like, I want everyone to be able to listen to the music and not be like, I don't know what the hell he's saying. Like, ew, turn it off. You know what I mean? So I think it's important to try to reach more people, not just for the sake of like numbers, but just like for the sake of like having it. Because like, why do we make music? Like, why are we making music? The reason I make music is it helps me. It's
therapeutic.
It's therapeutic for me, which means I know it's therapeutic for other people.
Right.
So like, it's almost like we're doing a service, if you will, for other people that I know, enjoy it, and it means something to them. So it's always really nice to hear that, like, when people reach out and they said that, your lyrics helped me through a certain time, or like, your lyrics hit the nail on the head, and then they'll like say something and you're like, oh, well, that's not even what I meant.
Yeah.
Or like what I was really talking about, but you don't tell, you're just like, yeah, man, awesome. That's fucking cool that's what you got from that. And like, that's amazing. Even if that's not necessarily what you were going for, the fact is it helps someone get through something, and that's awesome. That's super beautiful, in my opinion. So
I've always found that fascinating and super, like you said, super beautiful and cool. Just to hear, like you said, how it resonates with people and stuff. I think it's music's so powerful, and just what you do, especially metal. And it's a very charged up, emotional genre. I mean, metal is like no other.
Super passionate. It's just really passionate. Like, I feel like I'm just kind of a passionate guy, and just like all of my endeavors, like pretty much most things I do, I'm like, I go kind of full tilt boog with it. So like music is no different in that regard. Like, so metal obviously made sense because I was just like, this is the most intense, passionate version, and so I gravitated towards that. So, yeah.
So you're talking about conceptual stuff at the start of the band. I have to ask, was the name of the band conceptual at all, or how did that come about? Or was it just like, hey, this sounds cool? Is there any fun backstory at all?
It's okay. Well, it's meant to be kind of almost, I mean, I don't know, like, if there's like a super official backstory. Like, we'd have to ask Julian, because he came up with the name. But I think, I mean, it's pretty much like, a lot of people are like, oh, like, they're elitists, or like, it's not that we are elitists. It's almost like meant to be ironic. Like, we're, it's like we're talking about like the concept of being an elitist is like, just that in and of itself is like, we deal with that in our world daily with, different versions of that elitism, and different versions of, and it could be like, oh, I like the best version of a thing, but like, who's to say what that is? That's opinionated, you know what I mean? Or it could be like, people who take control over everything and like want ultimate power. But it was more like, I think it's like a conceptual name to kind of be like almost kind of poking fun. It's almost like a mockery of that term in and of itself. So like, we aren't promoting elitism. It's just a concept that is interesting, and has a unique duality to it in concept. So yeah, I would say, but I don't want to say too much because I didn't come up with the name. Julian did. So like, I could get him on the phone and be like, bro, what were you thinking when you came up with that? But I feel like it just had to do with, kind of sounded cool, was a single word. I know we were going with like a single word name. We didn't want it to be like, the elitist ashes fall from the sky, how those names were super cool back in like 2005, 2006, like the band name that goes like off the page. You see the ellipses. It's like the band name starts and then there's ellipses. You can't read the whole band name. So I think it was just like single word, memorable, kind of easy to say off the tongue, and then like, ironic, like almost ironic, if you will.
Okay, cool. All right, so tips for new songwriters, lyrically, patterns, as far as like rhythmatic patterns, all that stuff, flow. What kind of tips would you give new songwriters?
something that I've worked with recently that like really just helped is to not like really don't overthink it. Like some people try to like, I think trying too hard sometimes is just like it just doesn't work because like what?
Like forcing it, like trying to force something. Like,
yeah. Like if you have an idea or a concept or something, you're like, okay, I know I just want to do something like this, or like, cool, it'll fit where it fits. Definitely don't just be like, we need to do this. We need to put it here. It needs to sound like this. It's like, no, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. Like just, it's kind of more like, go with the flow. Go with what seems just happens naturally and seems right. Like, for instance, when I write songs now, when I'm specifically with like patterns and flows, not lyrics, but like just kind of like where things are gonna go and how it's gonna be kind of laid out, I often go with like instinctual gut feeling. I kind of will like listen to the song and just record like, and there was just kind of like patterns, like just kind of float, like the first things I think of. Like I'll listen to the song a few times before I do that, but then I'll kind of go into it and just be like, well, this feels good here to kind of have a thing like that, but I won't have any tangible lyrics. I'll just be basically making like sounds, like whisper screaming into the microphone, just to kind of fill gap like the areas that make sense, but literally like a speed run of it. Like don't stop and then go back and be like, oh, delete, that wasn't good. It's like, do it, go through the whole thing, do the whole thing, and like guaranteed something will pop up in there that you did naturally that you'll be like, that was cool, that was really sick, I like that felt good too, because it like obviously happened in a natural way, and it probably fits really well. So then it becomes like, okay, well, so that's where I want this to start, but so what am I going to say there to make that part sound like that? So then you got to be kind of picky with like syllables and lyrics. You got to be like, well, it's kind of like a low part. That part was like and so it's like, well, I can't have a bunch of tons of crazy consonant sounds. It's more like vowels and slower words and at that part. So it's like, okay, well, I have to just think about that as I'm putting the lyrics in. I need to be like, oh, well, this part calls for this sort of sound, or like this sort of frequency or whatever. But yeah, I would say speed running patterns, and not overthinking it, like really not trying to force anything and just kind of like doing what comes naturally, because you'll be surprised, like even if it's not the whole song, and it could be, you can do this multiple times, of course, like it's not like one and done and it's like, oh, we either came up with a song or we didn't. It's like, no, you can just do it over and over again and pick little pieces until it finally starts to become like a cohesive idea. And then you can either fit lyrics you already have to it, or oftentimes it's funny because for me, I do have stuff pre-written down sometimes that I just like log and have written. But it's interesting because when Julian sends me demos or when I hear new music, it oftentimes, the music itself evokes like a very specific emotion or thought process in me, like the tone of, or the tuning, or like whatever.
It's like it speaks to you.
Well, yeah, like I mean, if the song is super melodic and like has all these kind of like octaves and high notes and is like proggy and like, it's sort of like, okay, well, this has a certain energy to it, and I'm probably gonna write a song more like this. But I won't know that until I hear it. But then I'll hear something else that's maybe a little darker, grittier, heavy, and immediately like my whole energy kind of shifts, and then I'm like, well, this sounds like it's going to be a little angrier this time around. You know what I mean? And it's not like that was a conscious thought, or like I'm forcing that. I'm not like, I want to make a heavy song, so I'm going to make it heavy.
Yeah.
It's more just like, well, no, the song calls for it because it makes me feels heavy, so I'm going to make it heavy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's sort of like, yeah, don't try to force too many things. Let stuff happen naturally and organically. And if it doesn't, then it's like, okay, well, maybe that wasn't meant to happen, and or just try something else or move on to a different song or like whatever. But I'm sure a lot of people know what it's like to have songs that are like sitting on the shelf that have just been there for like years, potentially even, that are like, there's cool parts, or like they're like, it's almost done, but they keep taking it off the shelf and like you dust it off and edit it a little bit, and then you're like, it sucks, it still sucks, and you put it back, and you know, there's just songs like that you'll have forever. But yeah, so like if an idea and a concept isn't working out, don't use it. You know what I mean? You can do another one. But so I guess that's what I would. The main thing is don't take yourself too seriously. Have fun with it. Let it flow, and kind of do things more like organically without like thinking about it so hard.
I definitely think the formula a lot of people use is, like you said, with the patterns first. You not necessarily trying to just throw lyrics out there. You just kind of figure out, like, you know, this part is going to go like this. Like, this is what I want to do here. And then you make stuff fit and work in there afterwards with the lyrics.
Right. And sometimes it can be the opposite. Sometimes you could be like, yo, I have this very, very specific lyric that I like. And you have like an idea for a start of a song or the end of a song because of that lyric. You're like, no, it needs to be said like this, needs to be done like this, but I already have it. I have the whole vision in my mind. You know what I mean? Sometimes that does happen, and you can even write a song because of vocals. Like, I have written vocals first and then written the music of the song around the vocals instead. Nice. And so, like, that's not common. It's not a common thing, but it has happened. Like, I've definitely been like, yo, I want to say this here. This is a cool intro. Like, I want this to be the start. This is the energy. Let's write a song where the drums come in like this and the guitar comes in like this, because that's how I envision it. And, like, we'll go from there. But once again, just I would say 95% of the time, though, it's probably the other way.
So how is it doing vocals with Julian? Is it, especially when you were starting off, was it challenging? Because you guys are definitely, you know, there's more tech, prog kind of stuff going on, and time signatures and stuff. Did you have trouble with it at first? Was it kind of just naturally picked it up, especially with you being a fan of, like, Born of Osiris and bands like that? Or
I think that's a great question. I think it definitely helped a lot that I had already listened to bands like that, and already kind of knew, like, what weird time signatures were all about, and just was into prog. Like, I was into that sort of stuff.
If you're not in this genre and you jump in and try to do vocals for it, it's a lot. It's a lot to learn. There's a lot to pick up on.
It can be a headache. I would say recording, just because of, like, how precise it needs to be at certain times. I would be lying if I said that there was a lot of, like, growing pains learning, like, how to do stuff and, like, hit certain marks, you know, and know how to pull off real quick. Because that was the thing. I would always, like, scream too long, or, like, it would, like, bleed into, like, the next line or something, and he'd be like, no, you need to stop earlier because you know, like, you need to transition faster. And I was always like, damn, that's so fast, or, you know what I mean, or, like, something like that. But yeah, just like anything else, you get used to it. And I would definitely say his writing over the years has sort of adapted to, like, be more beneficial for me, if that makes sense. Like, it's not, I mean, we still, I feel, are very tech and have a lot of prog elements, but I would say, like, the musicality in general, our songs are more structured, to put it simply. Like, they're just a little bit more structured and, like, well thought out, and they less just, like, random parts that are just, like, insane and just like, oh, that never happens again, you know, like a lot of non-repeating parts. We don't really do that as much anymore. So from a vocal perspective, it's actually a little bit easier for me to write for that, I suppose. But at the beginning it was definitely a learning curve. Specifically, Julian makes it really easy, though, because he's very helpful. He's good at vocals too. Like, he can do everything. So when
he's just a natural at everything. He's just
he's just very musically inclined. So I have a really good ear, but, like, he's got, like, perfect pitch, and, like, he can really figure out, like, harmonies really well. Like, he's super good at finding harmonies. I'm okay at singing the harmonies, but he's, like, the master at finding like, unique harmonies. And I'm just like, dude, like, I would have never thought to have used that there, or, like, you know, so stuff like that. He makes it a lot easier. He makes the process. He's really helpful with that. And I feel like we work as a really good team in general over the years. But yeah, vocals it's always, there's always that moment sometimes where you're just, like, doing something, and then you both look at each other and you're like, what are we doing? You're like I'm literally screaming so much. Like, we're just screaming into a microphone. You keep hitting click and, like, record. We're just, like, recording me screaming. What is happening right now? It's, like, such a silly thing sometimes. But then in like a live setting, or when you're listening to the full song and the record, you're like, it's not silly. This bangs. But it's like, it's such a interesting, like, niche thing to do. It's like recording vocals. It's so funny.
I had to ask the question because I had Tim, who used to be within the Ruins, on recently, and I asked him kind of a similar question, you know, how it was writing with Joe, and he was just like, Joe would essentially send me, you know, the demo, and it would be like, have fun, and that would be the note, would be have fun with this, because, you know, same thing, crazy time signatures and parts and super tech stuff, and then Tim would be like, okay, and come to the studio and be like, all right, this is what I got, and Joe would be like, touche, good job. Like, it just kind of like, he said it pretty much always just challenged each other. Like, he would challenge, like, okay, I did this part, so Joe would be like, all right, well, let me level this up, and then vice versa with Tim. And so I was just curious how it was writing with Julian, if you kind of like, you know.
We definitely, okay, like, he's not shy to be like, I don't like that. Like, if I would, like, do a part, and he was just like, nah, that's not it.
Good, though, because it pushes you to be better, like, as both musicians, like, both sides.
Or there, I mean, I say especially now, like, more recently, like, over the last however few years that we've been writing stuff, it's pretty much we all take care of our own side of the street for the most part, and like everything is just like, yeah, that's perfect, good job, you know, like, we don't really have a lot to say to each other about that, but we still do, like, he's super helpful, like, if he doesn't like a part or if he thinks it could just be better, he has constructive criticism, not just I don't like it. He has like really good constructive criticism to be like, maybe we do like this, you know, and we'll go back and forth and we'll be like, no, that's not quite it, and then we'll figure it out together, and it'll be like, oh my god, that's so much better. That's so much better. So there's obviously like the initial writing demo, you know, and sometimes I get like demo-itis and I get like super stuck in my head on something, and he'll be like, bro, drop that. We're doing this. We got to do this. It's going to be way better. And then once I like wrap my head around it, and I'm like, oh, you're so right. That is way better. What was I thinking before? You know what I mean? So
it's funny how those parts get ingrained in you, and you're just like, you can't let them go.
Yeah. I get demo-itis bad, man. Like, I even like parts, just like not even my parts, like things that he'll send me on guitar or like whatever, and like there's a certain drum part. We end up changing the drum part, and I'll be like, what happened to that drum part though? They'll be like, bro, that drum part was whack. Like Ben has way better drums on it now. And I'll be like, I was so used to hearing it. And I'll be like in a depression for like 2 days. And then I'll be like, oh no, you're right. The new shit's way, way cooler. That happens all the time. It's really funny.
All right. So we all know that as vocalist and frontman, you have favorite songs to perform live, or favorite parts rather. Mm-hmm. Do you have a favorite part or song to perform live? And other side of the coin, do you have one that you dread? Because we all know that even though you write them and you love your songs, there's always parts that maybe you go a little too hard in the studio and you don't really think out, damn, I need to do this live. And then you get up there live and you're like, this shit is really tough to do. So do you have either side of the coin on those?
Yeah, that's so funny. Because like, yeah, we're super, I'm way more conscious now about that, about like not doing something ridiculous in the studio and then being like, dude, I don't think I can do that. But it's, as you said, it's good to challenge yourself, because it's almost like, well, you're going to have to figure it out. You know what I mean? And then that can also be a time where you work out with other band members, like, okay, you're going to do this line. You're going to, like, because I need a break. It's not humanly possible for me to do this into that line that fast. So it'll be like, all right, you do that part so I can breathe for 5 seconds, and then I'll start the next part, something like that. That always kind of helps. That's a quick way to fix that issue. But obviously other band members have to be able to do it and be willing to do it. So like there's that. I would say yes. So one of my favorite songs to perform live, or at least, I mean, we haven't played in a while, like the new songs I'm really looking forward to playing live, and I think that it'll be really fun. But one of my favorite like a song that just flowed really well live for me, and I just like, I liked playing it, was Return to Sender off of it was off of an EP, Between the Bounds EP, but then it was re-recorded and re-released on our self-titled. That song just kind of had like a really good flow vocally to it, and there was a lot of parts in it that was just like, there's this part at the end with this gnarly pinch harmonic that is a wee, and then I'm like, I do this really low, you've stranded me face to face with a fucking nightmare. And it's just like a really like in your face moment. And I just enjoy doing it live because it was like the crowd would always get really into it. And that was like a really lyric forward song. So like the crowd would always be like singing and know the lyrics. And that was always, it's always more fun to do a song live when you have crowd participation.
Yeah.
And so that was definitely one. And then the other one I would say that was like really fun that I love to play live was always Lonely Giant, just because it's so bouncy. And like it immediately was very just like everyone was kind of like bow, 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 and it was fun. It just like had that energy to it. And it also was paced well. Like I had a nice chorus that I could sing, but then like it wasn't just jam packed with screaming vocals, like just way too much. And hey, yo, I'll be super candid and honest because I wasn't even the one who wrote this song. What probably my least favorite song to do, maybe not now. I would probably, I mean, I would enjoy doing it now. It'd be fun. But back in the day when we were playing it, I absolutely dreaded playing Caves live. Dreaded playing Caves. And it's so funny because that's like everyone's favorite song. And they're always like, Caves, 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 play Caves. And we're like, yeah, okay, we get it. But it's not really a song that's super conducive to a live performance. It's super, super technical and like almost to the point where you don't know what's going on. Not that they couldn't play it, like the band's super tight, they can play it well live, but like it doesn't matter how well you can play it. There's just so much going on, like that it's especially on the drums, that it's just sort of like so adding all the vocals to it and having to keep time and like hear myself, it was really hard to hear what was going on, like from the monitors. So I would be basically doing it all from like memory, just from like hoping I was in the right spot, sort of thing. And I guarantee you wasn't always the case. And so sometimes that song kind of came off to me as sounding like sloppy live. Not like, that's not the right word, but just not, it wasn't, I dreaded it.
Yeah.
I dreaded it. I didn't like it. I didn't enjoy it. And it wasn't an original, like I didn't write that song. So like I feel like that probably makes sense, like all the patterns and the way it was done. But I think that song specifically wasn't like when they wrote that song in the studio, I don't think that they were thinking about it live, like specifically. They were just like, yeah, this is a sick song. But yeah, the vocal patterns and everything about that song is very like, it's tiring just to think about, actually.
Off topic a little bit, but do you wear in-ears? I know you were talking about monitors. Do you wear in-ears at all, or do you just solely go off the monitors and hope that the house PA is worth a damn, where you can actually hear stuff?
In the past, I was always just going off the monitors. Now I would have in-ear. I would definitely have, for sure. It was more just like back in the day when we were like younger and just it wasn't as common back then, unless you were like.
Yeah,
like
I never wore in-ears back then.
Yeah. But I absolutely would now, for sure.
I just swapped to them. It's different. It's different compared to what I'm used to. But do you put both? Do you still wear both in, or do you? Because a lot of people tell me they'll take and just have one out, just so they can still. No, have, I
would definitely only have one.
Okay, so you do the one just so you can hear the live feed, the crowd, everything.
To that point, when I'm recording, I'm only one head in. Okay. I have to hear myself to a degree.
Yeah.
And I'm one headphone in, one out when I record as well.
Okay.
So that's pretty common for me, at least.
Yeah.
I also prefer to sit down when I'm recording.
Dude, I don't know how you do that. I can't sit.
I love sitting. I love sitting.
Weird. I don't know.
It's really comfortable for me. Actually, you want to know a little secret? My favorite place to record is the car.
Really?
Yeah.
Just the acoustics of the car?
That's where I practice. That's where I practice. Okay. So like it's a really comfortable place for me. I feel like just comfortable because like that's what I'm used to doing. I'm in my element when I'm in the car. So super fun fact, Dark was actually recorded in Julian's car.
Nice.
we like made his car like a music studio. We like, you know, set everything up, and he was in there with his laptop, and I had the microphone and everything. And we
You
just
guys should have filmed that. That would have been awesome. Been like
I think we have some footage of it, but like it went so well, we might just record all the songs like that. Well, who knows? But it was yeah, it's funny. That's like a weird niche thing about me. Like I prefer to, like, I could probably do a whole set sitting on a stool, but like that would be weird. That would look really weird. I would never do that. But I could do that.
It might go viral though. You might be like the next big thing. Metal vocalist sits
like,
on a stool the whole time, like he's doing like an acoustic set or something.
It looks like we're about to do an acoustic set, and then I'm just screaming on a stool, just not jumping around. Yeah, that would be funny.
All right. So this next question is a little weird, and there's a reason I put it in there. I have a specific reason, but I want to ask you, do you have a favorite call out? And now this can, again, we can kind of do it and make it a little easier. It can either be something you've said at a live show or something you've heard another band say. The reason I put this question in there, Kyle from Body Snatcher, I'm going to keep saying he's the reason, but he likes to throw really random call outs that make no sense. When it's like the most stupid heavy breakdown of all times, he'll say the most off the wall things. And I think it's hilarious just because the crowd is so amped up. And then he'll say something like, there's no Chipotle or no guac at Chipotle or just something just off the wall. And then everybody just goes nuts. And I think it's hilarious.
I was curious what you mean. I was like, did you mean like calling someone or something out?
No, just like before a breakdown or something. Because Killswitch Adam D, he used to always say just off the wall shit all set long. And so some people are a little more serious with, you know, the let's go or open this shit up or whatever. Some like to just say random stuff that just catches people off guard. And
Sure. I used to, it's actually funny you say that. I would do the random stuff like during mic check, like to kind of like settle the crowd down and kind of like get a feel for like just fun vibes. I mean, metal shows are always really funny and like crowds are always like really chill people for the most part. And so I would always gauge like what kind of crowd we had sort of thing. So I'd go out there and while everyone was kind of like tuning and doing whatever they need to do, because it's always a process to kind of get started. I would definitely like talk some random shit. I remember this one time like in Portland, I remember it was at this specific show. I just went to the mic and I said cheese, and I just like said cheese into the mic, and then I like looked around and then I was like Gouda, and then I waited, and then someone in the crowd was like mozzarella, and then someone was like Swiss, and then basically everyone just started naming cheeses, which was like the best thing ever. So for like 10 minutes, because there's a lot of cheese, bro. There's a lot of different types of cheese. So for like 10 minutes, I just from different parts of the room, there's people shouting out random cheeses. And yeah, man, first of all, I love cheese. Second of all, it was really funny. And it was definitely like got everyone in like just like I was super settled, you know, after that. I was like, I'm in a great mood. This is going to be super fun. Like, we'll be right out. We'll be right back. You know what I mean? And so things like that definitely make for a good time with audiences and fun stuff like that. I would say normally when like a breakdown happens or when I'm trying to like rile people up, I probably most of the time will just say like, get the fuck up, you know, like or
I feel like that's normal for in the moment because it's, you know, aggressive music and there's a lot of energy. Where
or
normally
like,
there's a few that will throw out just random things. It's like just completely like it almost like it just switches your brain. You're just like, wait, what the hell did he just say? What just happened?
Yeah, no. Sometimes definitely random shit would happen, or I would see like live shows are crazy because like at any given time something could be going on in the crowd or like that you see from the stage. You see a bunch of shit going on. So sometimes it's like distracting. Sometimes you'll see something and you'll be like, oh shit, you know what I mean? And like, so I actually think there's been moments where like before a breakdown it was like, and then I was like, oh holy fuck, you know, or like, you know, just because I saw something and it just happened to be at that moment. That happened. That definitely happened. But yeah, like just I don't know, whatever comes to mind in the moment. Like I'm a very in the moment guy, and so like depending on what I don't have preconceived like logged.
Yeah, you're not like I'm gonna say this show. You just kind of go with it.
Yeah, no, I that always felt like really forced and like generic to me when bands did that. I was like, clearly they say this at the same part of their set every night at every venue, you know, sort of thing. And I don't know, like people can do whatever they want. It wasn't my thing. I was more just kind of like
if I don't feel like saying anything, I'm not going to say anything. If I feel like talking a bunch, I'm going to talk a bunch. You know what I mean? So it just depended on my mood.
All right. I love that. It's just a off the wall kind of question. It's funny just to hear everyone's answer on that.
Yeah, no, that is a fun question.
Next one is it's another weird one. We're getting to the weird portion of the questions here. This one was definitely taken from like athletic standpoint. I don't know how much you follow sports and stuff, but a lot of times athletes will have like superstitions and like rituals and stuff like that they do before games and stuff. Do you have anything like that before the studio or before a show? Do you have anything other than like your vocal warm-ups? Is there anything you have to do? Like, do you have to do push-ups? Do you have to wear a certain pair of socks? Whatever.
I do push-ups, actually. It's funny you say that.
Just to get the blood flowing, kind of get...
Yeah, it's kind of good just to get like everything kind of pumped so that you're like, like you're just kind of ready. And yeah, I like would pace and probably shadow box, you know, like that type of thing. Like I just kind of anxiously need to get stuff moving, and I'll throw spin kicks, and I'll just like be, just trying to get everything kind of loose and stretch. I stretch a ton. Like I need to stretch. Stretching is super important to me before going on stage, like to the point where people are like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm stretching." And like I need to stretch like a lot. So you'll catch me stretching a lot probably. And yeah, no, other than that, probably not. I don't have too many routines. As I said, I kind of like change what I'm doing depending on how I'm feeling. But yeah, like definitely a little exercise, like to get the blood flowing. Actually, like we would actually like work out often before going on. Maybe not right before our set, but in general before all the bands kind of went on. It's really common to have like a group workout, and like everyone kind of like lifts and does some stuff. And
what about also probably studio? Do you do anything before the studio, or just kind of like save it all?
I just have to have a really good meal in my system. I actually preferred not to have a ton of food in my system for like live show, like touring, for obvious reasons. You're jumping around on stage and you're screaming about it. It's like I tried to keep my meal to like basically huge breakfast or like an early lunch, and then dinner after the show. Yeah, like dinner after I perform. So, but when I'm going to the studio, it's not the same as a live show. So I need to be super fed and like feel really good so that I have like a ton of energy to like, throw it in the studio. So just eating well, making sure I have a lot of sleep. Like it's better if I could roll out of bed and just be at the studio, that would be ideal. Like I need to be as calm and like slept as humanly possible. And then,
Okay. Nice. All right. So do you have any fun tour stories that you can share, or you're at liberty to share? Anything that comes at the top of your head? Because I know there's some that definitely probably should not see the light of day and be shared. And then there's some fun ones that maybe you can share.
Yeah, I mean, there's it's funny. There actually aren't that many like crazy ones. People assume like bands on tour like have all these insane stories. It's like, dude, you don't have time to do anything crazy. Like you're literally traveling the whole time. I mean, what ends up happening crazy is during the traveling, just experiences that you have on the road or with your tour van or your bus or like whatever. It's all like the craziness that happens there. I mean, I would say on that note, one of the more wild things that happened to us was like almost hitting a moose in Canada when we were in Vancouver. And dude, those fuckers are huge. Like people don't understand. Like we're in a huge van with like a trailer attached. Like this thing is like, it's huge. And this thing could have just like crushed the whole van with just like one stomp. Like we're talking like the wingspan of their antlers is like obnoxious. It's like 20, like people don't understand how big moose are, like fully grown. And so we basically almost just ran into just a straight up moose, and our thing like kind of jackknifed, and because we had to slam on the brakes. And like we basically hit it, but like not super hard. And I remember it was just like, oh my God, like we almost just got completely wrecked by a moose. Like it was gnarly. And we were just talking about this with the boys the other night. Probably like one of the scariest experiences was this was a summer tour. That's why this was so weird. It was like kind of right around this time now, I think. which the weather has been rather insane this year too. But we were in Texas. We were coming home from, I think our last show was in St. Louis, I think. And so we were driving home through Texas, and basically we got stuck in a tornado like warning zone, and it was night, and it started raining, but then it quickly turned to like golf ball size hail.
Oh.
And it was so weird because it was like summer, and we were like, what's happening? But it was like a weird storm surge going through Texas. And I didn't even know that like it got that cold in Texas, but like we got this flash cold. It was like 21 degrees out, and literally hail this big started just pelting. And so we were worried that our windshield was going to like break, like all our windows were going to break, and we were going to be like, we kept getting these warnings on our phone, like tornado warning, tornado, but you can't see. So it was nighttime. So we were like, which direction should we not go? And like, I just remember there was like multiple tornadoes that ended up forming like in the distance, and we could see just like some insane, and we basically had to just park and wait it out underneath a freeway overpass for like 6 hours. And we totally thought we were going to die. We were like dead set that was, but we were scared, like for sure. Like it's one of the only times in my life that I was like, are we gonna die? Like I was like, we might get like swept up by a tornado, guys. Like this is not good. And it was like not a car in sight. We couldn't call. We had no service. Couldn't call anyone. We were just getting Amber Alerts like consistently, and trying to listen to the radio. It was brutal, but not really like a fun story. More just kind of like a exciting tour things that can happen. You know, like
tornadoes.
Yeah, dude. And I remember that same tour we actually passed through.
Wait, was
Arkansas.
the Moose and the Tornado on the same tour?
No.
I was about to say that's a wild tour. You almost hit a moose and then you're in like multiple tornadoes.
Yeah, no, yeah, that was more of like an East Coast, Southern tour, and then the one that I'm talking about was actually with Misery Signals and Color Morale, and it was essentially like a full Canadian tour. We basically just went all over Canada. It was like Western United States, and we went everywhere in Canada. That was a super, super fun tour. I'll always remember that one.
Okay. So, favorite place to play in the U.S., and then you guys have been outside of the U.S.? Did you go to Europe and everything?
Well, we didn't as a band go to Europe. I mean, we've been to Europe. Is it like,
okay.
I've never been to Europe the bandmates have been to Europe, but we never played Europe as a band.
So favorite place within the U.S. that you guys have played?
And
Canada.
But yeah,
we'll include
right. But it's still
yeah, same,
North America. Favorite place that I play. Well, it's interesting because I have like favorite cities that I enjoy. Like I love the city.
Okay.
You know what? One of the most insane shows like I've ever some of the most insane shows we ever played were all in Canada, and it was partially because of probably who we were touring with and what those shows were like. But Canadian crowds are wild,
really?
Like really wild, like in the best way possible. Like, but all the like hockey players come out and are like totally okay, just bleeding all over the place. I remember we were playing a show in Calgary, and they had this like, it was this really sick kind of like bigger bar / theater, and there was this big balcony that was overhead, and people were just jumping off the balcony onto the main floor, like trying to crowd surf, but just jumping off the balcony like willy-nilly. And there was people in the bathroom with like broken noses, blood was just like going all over. I remember being like, everyone's bleeding. Like, what is going on? But like, I was like, fucking hell yeah. Like, it was crazy. but everyone's so nice. It wasn't like, it was just like violent for no reason. Everyone was just like, and like really into it. But like picking each other up, taking care of each other. But like the Canadian crowd is savage. Like they really like metal. I didn't really know that. I wasn't like super expecting that. But like, yeah, Edmonton Theater, Calgary, when we were in Saskatchewan, when we were in Vancouver, like, but all the Canadian dates were really sick, actually, now that I think about it. But in the United States, let's think of a really good show, or let's think of one that it was super memorable. That's hard. There's a couple really good shows, like Buffalo. We played a really good show. Ooh, Nashville was fun. Oh, Atlanta.
Where did you play
Probably
in Nashville?
Atlanta.
Just out of
Probably the
curiosity.
Masquerade in Atlanta.
Oh, okay, Masquerade.
Yeah, Masquerade was sick. I think we played there several times. We played, I think, Hell a couple times, and then we played the Heaven Room like once or twice. I forget. It was several tours went through the Masquerade Ball, and it's just a cool venue in general and a cool place. Like that part of Atlanta is really cool and good vibes. People are a lot of fun shows there. So yeah, I'd say like.
Where did you play in Nashville when you played? Do you remember? Was it the Muse?
No, it was called like the Rock.
Rocket
Not
Town?
Rocket Town. What was that?
Rocket Town?
I think it was Rocket Town.
Okay.
Or is that? It's like a smaller venue.
Yeah. Well, I don't know that they're actually doing live shows anymore, but they used to have 3 different levels. They had like it was almost like a coffee bar, smaller place, like very intimate, and then they had like a level 1, which was where most shows were. And then they had like the main stage, which is like huge stage, huge, almost like warehouse.
So that's kind of like how Masquerade was, because Masquerade was set up like it had Hell, and then it had the like middle room, the Purgatory room.
Yeah.
Which was like, it was basically just a bar, and then it had like it was like a much smaller room. So if you were playing like DJs would play Purgatory or whatever, but like full bands didn't really play in there. But if you played Heaven, it's like a much bigger room than Hell, but Hell was still pretty big. Like, I don't know, it was. But yeah, no, that rings a bell. What you're referring to, we probably played just like the middle normal room.
I'm from Tennessee, so we played a lot, all through Nashville and stuff. So that's why I was curious. It's always funny. I don't know if you remember the Muse. It was the other venue there, but now it's a Domino's. So it's always funny that like bands that come through and would like play there a lot. They'd be like, "Oh, so yeah, I played the Muse." Like, yeah, now it's a Domino's. And they're like, "Oh shit, that's crazy." Because it was definitely like a dive bar venue, back then.
Yeah, and there was a lot of bands that a lot of bands. There was a lot of venues we played like multiple times. Like I have a lot of memories just because like every tour we played there, like Studio 7 in Seattle, or there's a pretty cool place in Dallas we played. Texas is fun to play shows. Yeah, I don't know. Like, yeah, I'd have to dive deep and like go like down memory lane. I'll tell you where I don't like to play. I don't want to alienate. I don't want to alienate anyone in the audience, but it's just a combination of the weather and just how insane it is there. Florida, not a fan of Florida.
How did I know Florida was coming? How did I know that was coming?
Dude,
the humidity, probably the heat.
I can't. The humidity and the heat, dude. I mean, like, there's hot, humid places. Like New Orleans in the summer is hot and humid. Yeah. Texas in the summer is hot and humid. Listen. Nothing is worse than Florida though. Like I have never experienced that in my life. And I just was like, oh my God. I remember one time we were playing this one venue and they all were allowed to smoke cigarettes inside. Everyone was still chain smoking cigarettes inside the venue. And it was like a big-ish venue, but like there wasn't enough ventilation to not have cigarette smoke inside matter. And I just remember being so pissed because like I'm not a smoker. I don't smoke cigarettes, and I never like really did. And so having to do vocals and deal with all that and play a whole show with just like cigarette smoke in the air was like the worst thing. I remember like telling the audience, I was like, I hate you guys. I literally hate you. And like just talking shit to everyone. Just being like, yeah, like I was just, and everyone was like, yeah. And I was like, no, you don't understand. Like, I'm serious. Put your fucking cigarettes out. I was so mad. But it was funny.
All right. And kind of in line with that, do you have a favorite band that you toured with? Was there a band that you're like, man, that was a great tour. I love touring with them, or bands, plural. Maybe we can get like a top 3.
Yeah, well, I'd say some of our good buddies and like a band that we've toured with a couple times that we like a lot, and they're just like really good guys, are the dudes from Era. Love touring with Era because like the most recent tour we did with them, which was forever ago, it was Texas in July and Era.
Oh, nice.
So JT was still in Texas in July, and Garrison, it was his last tour with Era, and I remember that was like a super memorable tour because it was like with Garrison, but JT was also there, and that was like foreshadowing him being in Era.
Yeah.
And it was just like a really, really, really fun tour. And yeah, just the guys in Era are super sick. Love those dudes. Also the guys from Structures when they were touring and they were around. I'm a huge fan of those guys, and we had all just like the best dudes, like just super nice, chill guys, and great musicians. And they put on a fucking amazing live performance. And yeah, I would definitely say like Structures and Era, and
it's crazy to see how far Era has come. I remember
them
jumping on pretty much any and every show. We played with them way back, you know, when they were starting off with Garrison and all them. And to see where they are now, man, it's awesome. They've earned it. They've busted their ass, man. They're awesome.
They've worked really hard to get where they are for sure, and they're super talented. So I wish them all the best, and I'm super happy. Yeah, I just saw JT not long ago, and like I go see them whenever I can. When they're in LA area, where you know I don't have to drive like too far. I'll always go try to see them play. I think the last show I went to see them was like Alpha Wolf.
Oh, nice.
And North Lane, or.
Okay.
Oh no, it was Thornhill and Alpha Wolf in Era. I think that's what it was. It was a crazy show. It was really fun though. But yeah, I mean that Misery Signals. So one of my most memorable tours though was like that Canadian tour with Misery Signals and the Color Morale. That was super sick, and like honorable
that's
mention
a crazy
to
tour
like
package. That's a wild.
Yeah,
Dude,
yeah. And that was some of the best times I've had in my life, just in general. I feel like it was a little different because like the guys from Mystics were a little bit older than us at the time, especially like we were kind of like the young, like new kids on the block, and so we almost were like sort of nervous around them. They were the coolest guys and they were super nice, but it was just like we were almost like kind of like starstruck, like oh, we're Mystics, you know, like but. Those every night they just put on the best show, and the Color Morale just tore the roof down every single night. That was on their No Hope tour. That was like right when No Hope dropped.
Yeah.
And we just had a blast. It was a super amazing tour. And yeah, it was great seeing Canada and experiencing all of that with them. And yeah, I'll definitely always remember that tour. But yeah, just as far as like, I think I got to know the guys in Era better. And like we spent more time with them, like on a personal level, you know.
Yeah.
And so it's always fun to like have lifetime friends from experiences touring and whatnot with the homies.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I know I've taken up a lot of your time, so I only got just a little bit more for you. I wanted to ask. Sure. So Elitist put out an album 2015, correct? Was that the last?
Correct. Yeah,
the last thing you put out before Dark?
Was a single called Control Alt Delete.
We released that. I'm trying to think of like the spacing.
2021.
2021. Okay, so 2015 to 2021, you had a 6-year hiatus.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then we pretty much. I mean, Control Alt Delete was sort of just like a hey, let's make a random song. We haven't done anything in super long. Let's see how it goes. And it was sort of like a test run to see if we wanted to do more music.
Okay.
And then we were sort of like. And to see where we were sonically, and to see like what the vibe was, and we were kind of like, oh, this is kind of cool, this is new, this is different, like this is sick. And then after that, we kind of decided like, hey, let's do something, let's do something again. That was fun. Let's do it more seriously. And so yeah, now we're kind of full steam ahead with writing essentially a new album and coming out with new music. But yeah, Dark was I guess February. We released that this February.
I wanted to ask, going from 2015 to you said 2021, correct?
Yes.
So 6 years. How was it doing vocals after a 6-year layoff? Was there rust? Was there like getting a feel for it again? Like, okay, I don't remember this feeling this way, or how was all that?
I would actually say I think my vocals had just gotten better by that point because I still practiced and I always did vocals.
Okay.
Like even
so
though
there was no layoff from you then.
Not technically. Like I wasn't. It was a learning curve to just get back in the studio and be like, oh yeah, this is what this is like. Specifically the studio was like it's its own beast. It's a whole different thing. But I was always doing vocals, still practicing, always
Okay.
still practicing, and like learning new tech. As I said, there's never a time that I stop taking influence from even bands that are coming out now or like new albums that are being released. I will always take influence and like accidentally change up my approach or my style with what I'm listening to now. Like I can't help it. So that's why I'm never like stuck in my ways of like a certain type of sound. I'm always sort of evolving in that way, I guess.
Okay. I was just curious about that. Nice. All right. So I've took up a ton of your time. So
Yeah, I didn't even realize how long it's
I know
been.
we've just
crazy.
been chatting away. How I like to end it, I just like to kind of give you the floor and let you spread some knowledge and, you know, to aspiring vocalists, people thinking about picking up the microphone, someone that's been doing vocals, maybe you can just kind of like pick your brain for a minute and give them some advice, whether it be, you know, going out on tour, touring advice, studio advice, just learning to scream, like anything. The floor is yours, just to help motivate and inspire.
Okay, for sure. Well, I would definitely say the most important thing, and I know this like almost might sound like a joke, but it's not. The most important thing is have fun, man. Like have fun with it. If you're taking it too seriously and you think that like and you're not having fun, like what's the point anyway? Like you should be doing this because it's something that you enjoy. So if you're not enjoying it, you know, don't do it. Don't be forcing yourself to do things you don't enjoy. It's really, it's a cool thing to have as a tool for like getting through stuff. Like it's a great outlet. It's a super awesome outlet. Just writing music in general. Don't be too hard on yourself. Everyone is their own worst, you know, their biggest critic. You know, I'm my biggest critic. I think that's really common. So just don't be afraid to like take chances and do things that are maybe even out of your comfort zone. You know, try new things, but just enjoy the experience and just go for it. I would say like you're never gonna like attain exactly what you want right away. It's just never gonna happen. It takes time and practice and dedication. And that's why it has to be something that you love. Because if you don't love it, you have to do it a lot. You're gonna have to do it a lot. And so, because like I feel like for years and years and years I did it and like didn't really get anywhere with it and like was like not very good. And like I feel like I'm way better at vocals now today than I was 10 years ago. But I've literally been doing it the whole time. So that makes sense as to why I've gotten better. Or I feel more confident at least. It's really all about your confidence. It's not really, because being good or bad at vocals is once again kind of an opinionated thing. Like someone could hear someone's vocals and be like, dude, that sounds amazing. And someone else could hear those and be like, I don't like those at all. They sound terrible to me. Yeah. So it's more like just so that you can be in a place where you have confidence. And that's all that matters is like that you're confident in your abilities and you are having fun. And, yeah, I just throw it, just rip it. Like there's only one way to figure it out, and it's really like trial and error and just like going for it. So get plenty of sleep and drink plenty of water and stretch, kids. That's
there we go.
My public service announcement.
Public service announcement. Nice. All right, man. Well, thank you so much. Is there anything you want to plug for Elitist or anything?
I would just say, yeah, if you guys haven't heard the new single already, Dark, from my band Elitist is out now, and it's we're really happy with how it turned out, and we would love if you go spin it. And very, very soon, keep an eye out for new music coming very, very soon. And a new album down the pipeline. So.
Links will be down below, so definitely go check out everything. Go show Elitist some love. Pre-save when the album and the song comes out, and go listen to Dark right now.
Hell
on
yeah.
YouTube, there's
Thanks,
a video,
brother.
and it's streaming everywhere, right? It's on
yeah,
everything.
Yeah. Spotify, iTunes,
everything. Just go.
Yeah,
go
everything.
All right, man. Well, thank you so much.
Cool.
I've took up way too much of your time. I appreciate you sweating with us out there. I know it's crazy hot. And thank you so much, man. It was awesome chatting with you, and I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you for having me, man. It was a lot of fun. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. You have a great one, and talk to you soon.
All right, peace.
Thank you all so much for watching or listening to this episode of Behind the Vocals featuring Chris Balay of Elitist. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed chatting with Chris. It was a wonderful episode. Please be sure to check out all of Elitist's links down below and show them some love for their upcoming music. Thank you all so much for watching or listening, and I'll catch you on the next one.